Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. I am Kris. This is part 4 of how Islam saved the Western world. I just finished. Hold on, I gotta get a drink. It's soda, it's fine. It's cheap soda, which is the best soda. Hey, I grew up poor, so we drank cheap soda. I'm sorry. I treat myself to a Coke Zero from time to time. Ooh, I'm a naughty one. Got some tea. Because I got my, look at this, delicious peach pastry. Oh, I got an apple one too. I'm gonna pig out tonight. Some peppermint tea. Oh, I'm living the dream right now. So, if you just watched part 3, that was my stomach, I apologize. If you, shut up. My stomach was rumbling. If you just watched part 3, you just found about a 2,000-year-old steam engine and a rocket that spins in circles and then a gearbox TV. I was amazed. You should be amazed. It's a spoiler if you haven't seen part 3. Why would you be starting with part 4? That's just weird. So let's just get into this video. It's 15 minutes, but it'll hopefully burp video. You know what I'm trying to say.
So my family from my father's mother, so my grandmother's family, are Finlandssvenskar. That means a Swede from Finland. So I was raised to believe I was a Swede, because Swedes are cool. And I was raised to be racist against Finns. Is it racist? Are Finns a race? Anti-nationalist against Finns, there, because Finns are a nation, not a race.
Sorry. I was raised, my mother was, and I've said this before, my mother was born, just gray hair in case people were wondering, I'm not a slob. My mother was born in Munich, Germany on the military base. She moved to Wales when she was 2, I think. Lived there until she was 16. Moved to the Americas. Good job, Kris. And St. Patrick's Day, huge in America, right? She wouldn't let me wear green. I've mentioned this before on the channel. She wouldn't let me wear green. And her response was, "Why do you want to wear green? You're not Irish." Well, according to the DNA test, I am 50-some% British and Irish, and I've said it in the last one, episode 550 of my videos. You can do Kris Stanton DNA tests, and you'll see it. As some people said, I'm an international man, but my mother passed. I did the test in 2017. Yeah, because I got my results early 2018 before I went to my sister's house for vacation to go to Virginia. And so my mother died 5 years before, she died in 2012. So 2017 we did the test, and I always think how mad she would be because she'd be like, "No, we're not Irish," and be like, "Yeah, nope, we are. You can't hide that anymore." But my mother would have been racist against the Irish because we're not Irish, we're British. Okay, Mom, we're 100% British, according to her.
So in other words, I was taught, Finns suck, Swedes are wonderful. Now, here's the weird thing about Finlandssvenskar is there's Swedes from Finland. And the reason there were Swedes in Finland is Sweden conquered Finland. So they were the nobles who went in to rule Finnish land and peasantized the Finns. So they were not good guys. And they ruled over Finland in this really nasty way for centuries. And then in the Napoleonic Wars, Sweden picked the wrong side and they sided with the French. The French lost. I don't know if you know that. Napoleon was defeated. And so as part of Sweden's punishment, Russia took Finland from it. The Russians then went to the Swedes living in Finland and they said, "Hey, you guys know how to control these Finns and rule them. You already have your little fiefdom set up with barons and dukes and counts and stuff. You keep doing that, but in our name, and we'll leave you where you are and you just pay us taxes. And the Finlandssvenskar went, yeah, that's a good deal. So basically we lost nothing losing to you in the war. And they're like, yeah, sure. That's how you want to feel about it. In other words, the Finlandssvenskar are not the most popular people in Finland. They're about 6% of the population, and it's an ugly history. I'm owning this. I'm not going to try and sugarcoat or gaslight you. My ancestors were on the wrong side, just so we're clear. Until World War II, and then we made up for it. The Swedes fought side by side with the Finns against the Russians, and all is forgiven. And the Finns and the Swedes are like the Bopsy twins of Europe now. I don't know if you caught this in the news a few months ago, but the Prime Minister of Finland said we want to join NATO, but we can't unless the Swedes join. And it's because Finland will never do anything without Sweden, and Sweden will never do anything without Finland. And Sweden said, we've been holding on to our neutrality for a long time, but if you need to join NATO, and we think you do because the Russians are a real threat, we have to join NATO to support you. Like, that's how their relationship is.
That's actually really cool. When you have two countries like that now, that are kind of, I don't want to say this, they're joined at the hip, kind of like what you do, we do. Like, I think that's really cool. Because we don't have that really. We have a similar relationship with the UK. But not like that. Would it be like that? Because Australia would be kind of the same way. But yeah. But then again, we don't worry about the UK saying, we're going to join NATO if the US joins. It's nothing like that. But I mean, it's a very cool kind of relationship that they have. I didn't know that. I want to know more about that now.
Very cute. They should totally just get married and get it over with. They are. They're already married. So in other words, if I went to Finland, even though there might be some latent resentment left, I'm probably okay. I'm not like scared or anything about it. I took 23andMe. Don't do 23andMe if you're a racist. I'm just telling you right now. It's gonna upend.
I did 23andMe and I loved it.
Your entire worldview of yourself. It turns out my grandmother was mostly Finnish. It's like, oh no. So now I have to spend years now trying to overcome my anti-Finnishness and embrace the fact that I'm more Finnish than Swedish. But am I? So she had a Swedish name. She spoke Swedish. She identified as Swedish. It's just genetically she was mostly Finnish. See how complicated this got all of a sudden? But now here's the really weird twist, and it's why I'm bringing this up. If you're a 6% minority in a place, and you only want to breed with your own nation, it's going to get cousiny really fast. You know what I mean? You're probably doing your children and grandchildren a huge disservice. At some point, you're going to want to open up to the possibility of marrying into one of the locals. And that's what my ancestors did. So what I am is I'm paternally Swedish, and I had a Swedish male ancestor who married a Finn, and then maybe he married a Swede. That child married a Swede, but then there were like two more Finns, and then a Swede again. In other words, as time went by, we effectively became genetically Finnish because that Swedish DNA just kept shrinking every time there was a marriage to a local. And that's what happened to Heron.
I apologize. I had to mute the mic because I was just laughing. I started watering. I just like Rick goes, eventually your kids, grandkids. let me just say this. If you are a small percentage minority in a country and you are more comfortable dating or marrying into your kind, I understand completely. I don't think that you need. No one has a right to dictate who you would get married to in terms of that. And I'm not talking about if there's a country that a country, not a country, like some kind of place where, like, does India still arrange marriages? Let's just say, I'm just going to use India as an example because that comes to mind. I hope I'm not wrong. Anyways, throughout India, let's just say arranged marriages in certain cultures, not countries. Cultures is what I'm meaning to say. So let's say that a certain culture has a, stick to your own kind of thing. I have no problem with that. I don't think there's anything racist with that. And if you are a white person and you want to date a white person, fine. Like, it's what you want. It doesn't matter what anyone else wants you to do. It's what you want. If you're black and you want to marry black, so be it. If you're black and you want to marry white, so be it. You want to marry Asian, so be it. Like, it's what you want. Because you have to live with the person for the rest of your life, male or female, or male, female, whatever you choose. You're the one who has to live with them for the rest of your life. You have to make these decisions. So these decisions need to be made something that you can. I'm actually using marriage as an example for life, even though apparently it's not anymore. But like, this is something that you have to want to be with that person. This is getting sidetracked. You understand what I'm saying? Arranged marriages, by the way, how prevalent is that anymore in society? Like, and I said India earlier because I don't know why it seems like that's what it was, but then it could just be subsections like cultures. Because I'm sure there's certain religious groups that would come to America, or cultures that would come to America, where an arranged marriage is just, it's what they know, and it's kind of what they're comfortable with, and they kind of want to know about the boy or the girl that their child is going to be with, to make sure they're going to be a right fit and it's going to be good for them in their future. So I've always wondered about that. And do arranged marriages, this is completely off the topic now, do arranged marriages, that's for life. Like, you would be disrespecting your family if you filed for divorce, or you wanted to divorce your relative. Oh my goodness, Kris. So arranged marriages are not between relatives. I know that. I have to clarify. Would it dishonor your family for something like that? These are not important questions for this topic, but it's just something I'm throwing out now, and I do apologize.
When the Greeks conquered Egypt, 300 years before Haran's birth, the Greeks definitely separated themselves out from the Egyptians because they saw the Egyptians as inferior. But after 15 generations, there was no way Haran wasn't part Egyptian. In other words, calling Haran the Greek scientist from Egypt is really an interesting proposition, because how Greek was he? How Egyptian was he? After 15...
The same could be said for slave owners, plantation owners in the South, 1700s in America. Not just the South, well, in the South, because who might have looked down on black people because they were, less than, and yet you would start to see that they had mixed race children, and you're like, black guy, black woman, mixed child. Something funny's going on here. White guy, is this your kid? No, of course it isn't. Oh, okay. Because I'm just going to say, the features, they point your direction, not his. So they look down on him, but eventually there's, and I hate to say this phrase because it sounds degrading, but there's There's interbreeding, which is no, there was rape. That's the correct way to say it. There was some rape, and then a child was born from that rape. So yeah, I see what he's saying.
Generations in Egypt, how Greek were the Greeks? If nothing else, their culture was modified by the Egyptians they lived around.
Yeah.
Their DNA was modified because they were marrying into them. Not Cleopatra. But when I said Cleopatra, you went, oh, the Egyptian pharaoh, the woman. Cleopatra, by the way, it's the 7th. I'm keeping track. I know y'all mostly aren't. Cleopatra the 7th is the famous one. Cleopatra the 7th, that you identify as Egyptian, was 0% Egyptian. So her family tree is wonky and difficult because on 2 occasions she had an uncle marry a niece. So I don't know how to do this because I can't count the generations back, because what am I supposed to do with the niece-uncle thing? Twice. So there's 2 ways to count it. Right, you count 7 generations because you count the niece as a separate generation, or 5 generations and you make your life not a nightmare. So I'm doing 5. If you go back 5 generations, the way to do this, the math on this, the math is fun, and the really cool thing is just about everything in the universe can be described as by math, right? You take 2 to the power of the generation you're trying to go to. So you're 0 generations away from you, 2 to the 0 power is 1. Your parents are 1 generation away from you, 2 to the first power is 2. Your grandparents are 2 away from you, so 2 squared is 4. Your great-grandparents are 2 cubed, that's 8. By the time you go 5 generations back, so 3 greats and then grandparents, you end up with 32 ancestors. You should have 32 great-great-great-grandparents. She had 4. A Persian and 3 Greeks. It's actually worse if you go 1 generation forward, you go to the 4th generation, she only had 2.
What the hell?
And then when she got to the 2, that 2 had 3 kids. One of the kids married his niece. His niece was the product of his brother and sister. So I don't even know where to go other than, oh my God.
When that starts to happen, you gotta figure there's gotta be some difficulties, because that gene pool's running pretty thin. So there has to be a kid that was born with like 1 arm. I mean, by the way it sounds, there had to be someone born with teeth up here and just a nipple on a chin. I mean, you're getting freaks now. You're getting, I don't know if anyone, I don't know what my audience is, but there's an American movie from the 70s called The Hills Have Eyes, and it's basically just incestual inbreeding. It's based on a true story too. Incestual inbreeding, and these people living in the mountains, and they're pretty much just like, they're grunting like cavemen basically. They're just like, and all they want to do is just kill. And yeah. Wow. Cleopatra was all messed up. Well, she wasn't. Her family was. Dang. And can you imagine just meeting her? You're like, hey, how are you doing? She's like, I'm fine. You're like, oh, okay. I'm not talking to you anymore.
But notice what we do. We go Cleopatra the Egyptian, Heron the Greek. Heron was definitely very Egyptian by the time we got to the 1st century AD. Cleopatra was definitely very not Egyptian at all in any way, shape, or form, because she had been so secluded from Egyptian culture, because the Greeks looked down on the Egyptians so intensely that they went out of their way to inbreed to try to prevent Egyptian DNA from entering the royal family. It's intense. Here, let me give you another example of what I mean by this. The guy who invented philosophy. Some people call him Thales. Americans usually say Thales. So I'm just going to say Thales to make our life.
The guy who invented philosophy, his name was Taylor Thirdberger. I'm pretty sure that's accurate.
Lives easy. Thales, the Greek philosopher who invented philosophy, wasn't Greek. He wasn't Greek. Isn't that cool? The guy who invented Greek philosophy wasn't Greek. He lived in a Greek city. The city was called Miletos. Miletos is today in Turkey. He spoke Greek, but he also spoke Phoenician because his family was from Lebanon. They were Phoenicians. They had moved to Miletos for business purposes. He grew up in Miletos and then produced the world's first ever work of philosophy, a book titled Water is Best. A Phoenician invented philosophy in a Greek city in what is today Turkey. But when we think of Thales, we think of a Greek. When we think of Heron, we think of a Greek. When we think of Cleopatra, we think of an Egyptian. That's what I mean. What we do is we have this tendency to be selective with how we apply the identities. And that gets all sorts of messy. Okay, so now let's do this. Let's shift. Now that I've got you thinking about identity and how we're careless with it, now I want to found Western civilization. So what is it that makes something West and something not West? So this is part of the reason why my title was meant to bring out contradictions. The East-West paradigm at some level is nonsensical because it assumes that there isn't connectivity with the other side and cultural sharing. So at some level, there is no Western civilization. That's a construct that's part of our imagination. At another level, there is a Western civilization because there is a geographical region that had a lot more connection with other places than with other places. One way to think of this then would be if you made the Indus River the boundary for Western civilization. Everything to the west of the Indus is Western civilization. But that doesn't mean everything to the east of the Indus is Indus civilization, or is Eastern civilization, because if nothing else, Indian civilization is so different from Korean or Japanese civilization, right? It's preposterous actually to start lumping together. But everything west of the Indus does have strong connectivity, and here's why. It's the Mediterranean. When we think of bodies of water, we usually think of them as dividers. That's because of our bias. The Pacific and the Atlantic are dividers because they're so big. They really do divide the old world from the new world. But the Mediterranean isn't a divider, it's a connector. It has the exact opposite role. It's just small enough of a body of water that getting across it isn't too difficult.
Most people have no clue that in 2023, the best way to make money on Amazon is not with physical product.
Hey, so just so everyone knows, because you're going to say, hey, get an ad blocker. So YouTube has...
Too difficult. It's insulated enough that it does have tempests, which are the Mediterranean cyclones, but they're never as intense as hurricanes. The ancient world...
Let me show you something that I found this morning, which was not something I expected. And I know you're not going to be able to see it because, you know, why would you be able to? No, you can't. Okay, it says ad blocker. Ad blockers are not allowed on YouTube. I got an ad blocker. And it says, it looks like you may be using an ad blocker. Ads allow YouTube to be used by billions worldwide. You can go ad-free with YouTube Premium, and creators can still get paid from your subscription. So they have changed that. So I think I'll be making the jump to go to YouTube Premium. I logged in this morning. It is Wednesday, November 8th, and to upload my videos for this morning, and that was what I was hit with. So I had to turn off my ad blocker, otherwise I couldn't continue onto YouTube. So just for people who are saying, hey, go get that, I can't. So I got to pay the price. Oh, I got an idea. Why don't you just work? Yeah, no, just do that then.
Just didn't sail during the tempest season, which was basically fall and winter. You just stayed out of the seas, and yeah, that way you could avoid it. And so what ends up happening is the Mediterranean connects because it's a highway. It's way easier to move goods and people by boat than it is by land. Land is a pain because you've got to build a road, then you've got to maintain the road, you've got to make wagons, and the wheels are constantly breaking, and you can hardly put anything in a wagon, and then you have all these stupid animals you have to feed, right? And then they need water or they'll die. And right, so if you're trying to get from Egypt to Morocco, don't go by land, go by sea. You'll get there really fast, it'll be very efficient, and your life will be relatively easy. So what ends up happening then is all the civilizations near and around the Mediterranean end up intimately connected together. So if we accept that premise, then yeah, there is some regionalism to it, even though at some level it's still a little bit of an artificial device. In other words, I'm admitting that we're maybe doing a little bit of a stretch here, but let's do it anyway for the sake of the exercise. So okay, so we've accepted that it was born in Iraq and Egypt, and then we've created a geographical boundary for it. Now we can talk about the elements. So some of the elements of Western civilization tends to be that Western civilization was pagan.
I'm going to stop it there and go back just a little bit because he got away from, he was talking about the, go by boat and stuff like that. So I'm going to do that. So that was an hour. Dr. Roy giving us with the information. Cleopatra. Ooh. Hi, Cleopatra. Hi! Okay. Yeah, she's definitely going to be eating people later on, so we better get out of here. That's probably why she liked her snakes. She liked her snakes. She probably walked out and kissed crocodiles. She was a crazy woman. Yeah. Too much inbreeding. But she gone. So there's a thanks button on the channel. You can click it and donate if you'd like. You don't have to. All donations are appreciated. You can request videos. You don't have to. You can just say thanks. You can still request videos without donating. If you don't want to do any of that and you're not a member of the channel, just subscribe. It helps me out. Give it a thumbs up. That helps out just as much. And if you want to give a thumbs down, YouTube has this new farm. I can't tell you where it is, but they're all over the place. They've got like 30 of them. What we do is we pick up everyone from your family. We take you to that farm. And then for the next 300 years, you live there in captivity and you just inbreed until we finally find this human thing. And then we're like, okay, we've changed the generations of that family and now it's this thing. And then we release it back to society. And really, your generation dies because no one's going to touch that thing. It's just walking around going, hey guys. People are like, yeah. That thing's lucky to walk and breathe at the same time. So, you don't want that to happen. So until next time, you have a good day, have a good night.